All right, here we are. This is Jay Brown Yoga Talks podcast. My name is Jay Brown. Welcome to you if this happens to be your first time here. Everyone else, what's up? How is everyone doing? I hope this moment is finding you reasonably well. I'm curious, how many of you listening to this right now who are teaching yoga classes on a regular, like you've got at least one weekly class that you teach, how many of you who would fall into that category consider yourselves professional yoga teachers? Like, would you say to someone, I'm a professional yoga teacher? Or better yet, how many of you think of yourself as having a career in yoga? I know that's like a semantics thing, you know. What does it mean to be professional? I've discussed this on the show that for me, I don't think being professional necessarily means that you make your living teaching or you make money teaching. That I've known many teachers who I consider to be professionals, like highly skilled and effective yoga teachers who don't make their living at it. So I feel like you can be a professional yoga teacher without it being like your main source of income, you know? But when you think of the word career, that does seem to imply like you make a living at it. And I was looking at the dictionary definition, and it was sort of alluding to like the possibility for you to progress and kind of like reach higher levels in your career or whatever. And I wonder, like, how many of us listening to this right now think of themselves as having a career in yoga? I don't think I've ever conceived of it in that way, but I have made my living solely from teaching yoga my whole adult life, which I think is becoming a more rare thing as time goes on. I wonder how many teachers who are starting out like nowadays, who've started in like the last 5 to 10 years, let's say, how many of them are able to make a living at it? I don't know. I'm curious. You can totally reach out to me and write me and tell me what you think, or tell me what your situation is. If you're listening to this right now and you're curious to respond, I would love to hear from you. But it's a conversation that I've been having for as long as I can remember around the industry of yoga and what it means to be a professional yoga teacher. And that has often included conversations around trade organizations, namely the Yoga Alliance and the International Association of Yoga Therapists. And it's funny, in my early blog writing, it was something I was always writing about because I was totally obsessed with thinking about it as a profession. And I think that's because I wanted to feel legitimate. I wanted to feel like I could be part of like the mainstream society and not like in the margins or on the outskirts. And it was like all about people thinking of yoga teachers not as like these flaky hippies, but like legitimate movement health professionals or whatever, you know. We were really trying to like, at a certain point, I think that was like part of the zeitgeist and the psyche of the yoga world. And the trade organizations have always just been wrought with problems and politics. And, you know, you can go back through the archives of this show and hear all the conversations I've had about the Yoga Alliance and the IYT over the years. But you got to go kind of far back. It's not something I talk a lot about these days. Although recently it did come up because there's been a lot of stuff going on in the yoga therapy world. And, you know, if you're not a yoga therapist, it probably makes no difference to you whatsoever, you know. And honestly, I think most yoga teachers feel that way about the Yoga Alliance as well. But I've always felt like there was the potential for a trade organization to be a good thing, even if the ones that we currently have don't seem to be. And for me, it really does come down to like how we think of what yoga teachers are. And it's a weird place between being like a spiritual undertaking and it being like a job or being like a business. All of these things have come together in terms of what it means to be a yoga teacher in 2025. And I think for me, having conversations around the trade organizations and credentialing and all that kind of stuff, I don't know, it helps give me some kind of perspective on the fact that this is the choice I've made and this is like what I've done with my life, So not everybody's interested in that kind of conversation, but I do think it really speaks to what it is to try to make yoga your life direction and to make it your sole source of income. And I'm always grateful to find people who will go there with me and talk to me about it. And that is certainly true for my guest today, Rebecca Sebastian. Rebecca has a podcast called Working in Yoga, and she started this Facebook group called The Future of Yoga Therapy, where yoga therapists from all over have been kind of hashing out and working through some of the recent developments. And it was really great for me to get her perspective on that, as well as like a whole range of other stuff in terms of like pricing at your yoga centers and stuff like that, all kinds of really interesting takes on things. And it was really a pleasure to get a chance to speak with her. I'm very glad to be bringing it to you today. Real quick before we get to it, let me mention that if you want to connect with me in other ways outside of listening to the show, there's opportunities for us to do that. There's a discounted rate on the teacher training program that I do right now. If you want to get in on that, there's ongoing live classes and a discussion group. Or maybe you just want to get into the full-length archives and become a supporter with a podcast premium subscription. All of my stuff can be found at jbrownyoga.com. All right, y'all, we're going to keep it short and sweet. I will touch base with you on the other side, but let's go ahead and get into it. Let's listen to this conversation that I had with Rebecca Sebastian. Hello?
Hello, hello.
Hi. How are you, Rebecca?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I am recording, and if it's okay, I'd like us to consider ourselves having just begun.
Great.
Cool. Well, Rebecca, I have very much enjoyed our email exchange and listening to your show. And I appreciate so much that you made this time for us to talk today. Thank you for doing this.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
And, it's funny. I was thinking about how to get us started today. And it occurs to me that a lot of people who listen to the show nowadays haven't necessarily listened to the earliest episodes of this show. When it started, one of the things that I wanted to talk about most was like the profession of being a yoga teacher and whether or not it was possible to make a living at it. And more specifically, the role of trade organizations in that, like the potential for trade organizations to help yoga teachers in the profession.
Yeah.
So the third episode that I ever did was on October 20th, 2015, and it was with Richard Carpel.
Okay.
And it was entitled Yoga Alliance and Bureaucracy. And it was like shortly after he had left his position at the Yoga Alliance.
Yeah.
And I would mention prior to starting the podcast, I was like very active in the blogosphere. And 3 of my most viral blogs were about Yoga Alliance. One of them was called Yoga Alliance Approved My Ass. And then that's when Richard Carpel became the president, I guess it was. And then he actually called me and we had a conversation, and he asked me what I thought he could do to make Yoga Alliance better. And he totally won me over. And I wrote another blog post called Giving Yoga Alliance a Chance.
Oh, generous.
Yeah, I did. And I
That's
registered.
very generous.
That's when I registered. I registered at that time too. And then, he did some things. He made the website that they have now. Essentially, he was the one who kind of brought in this idea of social credentialing, which didn't really pan out to be a good thing, but it was something, because prior to that, there was like nothing. I remember, I don't know how long have you been like conducting teacher training or certification programs?
Oh, this is actually funny. I just started training teachers this year, 25 years into the industry.
See.
And it was somebody who sat down in front of me and was like, I need you to have a major life realignment because I want to get trained and you're who I want to train with.
Yes, I get it. We can talk about that, actually. That's an interesting
Sure.
thing. But
Sure.
I asked because, when I started doing a teacher training, it was in 2008, I think, 2008. Yeah. And the
Yeah.
year after 2009 is when I went to the Sitar conference, which we can also talk about. But, at that time, Yoga Alliance, it had a thing on there where you could register with a non-registered school.
Yep. I remember.
And the only difference between registering with a registered school and a non-registered school was like some additional money and like paperwork.
Yep.
And it really was a true rubber stamp. Like if you filled out the thing and sent in the application, they would send you the certificate. There was nothing, at least when Richard came in and he made the website. Now, if I give someone a certificate and they go to register, I have to approve it. At least that was a layer, was something, It
Right.
was
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
minor step towards like some more accountability for what we were doing in these training programs, So anyways, this is very long-winded, forgive me, but I all of this is like background. I've also had a bunch of conversations about yoga therapy credentialing as well. And I kind of want to say this because I have a feeling a lot of them will listen because you're here. I think I kind of earned this reputation over the years of sort of like people thinking I was like against yoga therapy or anti-yoga therapy, and that's really not true. I think I've often had sort of questions around where the distinction is being made between yoga and yoga therapy, or a yoga teacher and a yoga therapist. And
Yeah.
I don't know if we have to have that conversation today or whatever,
We
but like,
we totally should because I have thoughts too, and I will say my thoughts have shifted in the last year, probably even in the last 6 months. And I've been a yoga therapist since 2010.
interesting. We'll definitely talk about that then today too. But all of this is to say, like, for me, this has always felt like an important conversation.
Yeah.
However, I have learned, and I've learned this since having the podcast, that like whenever I do these episodes about how messed up the Yoga Alliance is, or the issues around credentialing and licensure or whatever, less people listen. Like not as
Oh,
many people listen. And I think that's because, one, it's often sort of like an intractable, difficult conversation that doesn't feel good.
okay,
And it
sure.
involves like money and like the idea of being a professional and what that means, and that kind of gets into sticky places. But I also think that it's because there's a very small percentage of people, I think, who really are either like making a sole living at teaching yoga or being a yoga therapist, and or like want to. And a lot of people
Right.
who teach, and they don't need to have it be that way. And sometimes I've often pondered it might be better to not have to have it be reliant on making money off of it.
I mean, do you believe that though? Like, I don't
Well,
know.
well,
I
here's the
have
thing. What
complicated
I've always
feelings
said in
about
the
it.
past, I like that you didn't go there, because I always in the past have said, no, all the people who like helped me the most, like the teachers who really had an impact on me, and having witnessed the kind of transformational effects that yoga can have for people in their lives, those people were able to dedicate themselves in a way. They didn't have other jobs that they did. And I think there is something to having, I have made my living my whole adult life teaching yoga. I feel very privileged and blessed that that's been able to be the case. And I do think it's allowed me to immerse myself in what I do and my work in a way that I don't think you could if you had to spend so much time on a money gig.
So I guess my question then is like, okay, so stop me if I'm asking too many questions of you, but
No.
like, I'm curious, like, is the reason why most people in our industry don't do this professionally because only a few of us love yoga that much? Or is it because we don't have an industry that is set up to provide people with the financial resources to be able to do this professionally, unless you have more grit and determination than most sandpaper?
Well, I think it's definitely more the latter. Like, I don't think there's any lack of love for yoga. I
Yeah,
think that, as I've heard you discuss on your show, the role of being a yoga teacher became much more about just yoga and knowing how to like share in that. It became like small business owners, you know. I have a
yeah.
limited liability corporation, you know.
Same.
There's something that happened along the way where there was a time where it kind of became, you know, this multi-billion-dollar industry and people had like Nike sponsorships or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that it did kind of, I always say it kind of got brought into the mainstream. Now, why more people don't pursue it as like as a profession, I think that is more because of just shifts and changes that have happened not just in the yoga world, but I've often think I don't know, I don't think someone can do what I did 30 years ago now.
Yeah.
Like there
Yep,
just
yep,
isn't
yep.
there isn't the same opportunities. There isn't all the
Yes.
same local centers or the kind of centers where you could go as a young green teacher and get an opportunity and grow as a teacher.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, like the way to get good at any job, but especially this job, is to make sure your work is so good, you're undeniable, that nobody can ignore you. Nobody can ignore what you're bringing to your yoga studio, your local area, if you're a yoga therapist, like what you're bringing to the table when you see clients.
Mm.
And the ability to build skill set quickly like I did in the 2010s, you know, I mean, like we all have the same story, right? We were all teaching what, like 17 to 35 yoga classes a
Yes.
week, you know. It's the same story for all of us. That's
But
my
that
story
grind
too.
did shape us, didn't it? We learned stuff
Totally
from
did.
that. Yeah.
And it made us good really fast because
Mm.
if you're doing something, if you're physically teaching a yoga class 20 times a week, you get real good real fast.
Right. Okay, so you were a yoga teacher before you were a yoga therapist.
Yeah, so I started teaching in 2003 before I trained. So, right, like a very different industry, right? This is the
Yes.
the classic story of I took yoga classes. I knew somebody who wanted to offer a yoga class at their local like theater, their community theater. They were like, "We want yoga for our theater people." And the teacher walked into the theater and had said, "The energy's not right here, so I can't teach yoga." Like this is the most yoga story. I know, right? It's so us.
Because that's the cliche that yoga teachers were flakes,
Totally.
right?
Yes.
Yes.
And so I happen to know the guy who ran the theater, and he was like, "I know you're a yoga practitioner. Will you come teach this 6 week class?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Please." And I said, "Absolutely not." And then his wife, who's a very good friend of mine, was like, "Will you do it for me?" And I was like, "Well, fuck, now I have to." And that's literally the story of how I became a yoga teacher.
You know how it happened for me? I was in a class, and then after the class, someone I know, Hannah Casey, I should reach out to her. She just knew me from class. I went like every day. And back then, that was it. If you just showed up and you went to class every day and you absorbed everything and learned stuff, at some point, either your teacher would come up to you, or for me, this one woman who I didn't even really know her, she just knew me from class. She said, "I have this class at the YMCA and I can't do it anymore. Do you want it?" And I said, "Yes."
Yeah.
And that was it. That was it since then, 1995 or
And
96,
here
you
we
know?
are.
So I
Yeah.
get it. And it
But that doesn't exist.
no, it doesn't. You see, that doesn't happen for people now. Now people are either, but it used to be they were trying to like do Instagram accounts or something. And now I don't know what people would do. But here, I guess here's my other question is that, okay, so you you are a yoga teacher from an early time like me where we didn't
Yeah.
the training environment was different, right?
Yep.
Okay, so then it was ever at some point it did I do remember it was like around 1997 when I first really heard about Yoga Alliance, and
Yeah.
then by the time I had a center in 2007 and I was starting a training program, it mattered enough that in all of like my introductory sessions for my training, I had to explain why I wasn't registered with the Yoga Alliance.
I still do.
Because, I was qualified to, I could have been, but I chose not to because I would tell everyone that I was against it on principle because I didn't think it was helping the profession.
Sure. Are you in general anti-organization?
No, I mean, not in general. I mean, at this point, I haven't seen them work and I've become very distrustful of like not-for-profit structures and don't always see them. I don't know. Here's what I would say about that is I'm not against them at all. Like I said, I started out having Richard Carpel on here because he just called me up and he did a lot of really good things. We all got to pick the logo and people got to submit designs from the membership. And then we all got to vote on it. And they didn't even pick the one that I liked. But the fact that I got to vote mattered. I felt like it mattered.
Yeah, of course.
But then, he left. And it felt at the time we all wondered why he left. But I've learned later that there was all kinds of things behind the scenes that we didn't know, just like in his personal life and stuff. So it actually wasn't sinister or anything. But then David Lipsius came in.
Yes.
And I don't know if you know who David Lipsius is.
Sure do.
Funny. I mean, I did record an episode with him, but I have such not mixed feelings, or I don't know what they're mixed about that guy. Cause he did what he did at Kripalu, which is he made them kind of like more financially stable by kind of giving them like investment portfolios and stuff.
Like which you kind of have to do though. I mean, not to throw shade, but like, seriously, nonprofits especially are so financially unstable. Like I used to run a nonprofit. I have a, experience in the nonprofit space. Like money's a thing in that space.
Yes. So, I heard you describe yourself once as like a professional fundraiser. Is that right?
That was my first job out of college. I worked for the American Cancer Society. It was my very first job after getting my degree. And I traveled through Europe for a long time. And then I came back and this was like my first professional job. I did not last very long because I'm actually not particularly great at as an employee. I'm much better being in charge than being corralled, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a pretty toxic boss at the time, which of course, we didn't have language for.
And raising money, sorry to interrupt you, but raising money, like I'm in the neighborhood association, we're doing this kickoff party and like certain people are just good at it.
Yeah.
If certain people have more of a knack of raising funds,
I like connecting with people, and that is, in essence, what money transfer is, right? Like, so especially in that nonprofit space, if you're passionate about what you're talking about and you're good at connecting with people, this is like a skill set that for whatever, my mom's always like, she's very introverted, and she's like, I don't know where you got this from, but you should go do something with it. And so I never minded fundraising. I don't mind having conversations about any of that sort of stuff. It's really just allowing people to shift their energy, money's just energy, in the direction that hopefully they find to be positive if you're working in the nonprofit space. The trouble is, like you said, nonprofits can be incredibly toxic. They're run by humans who are power hungry, just like every other kind of human in every other business space. And if they're not doing what they say they're going to be doing, then we've got to talk, right?
Yes, I think that my issues with the not-for-profit, and I actually had Mike Huggins on, who ran very successful not-for-profits, about what he thought were the issues where, at some point, a lot of the work is fundraising, and then there's sort of a staff of people who are making a living working there, and it's generally not very democratic. You know what I mean? It's not like the membership really is getting to vote on who's on the board or what's happening or and often the way things operate, it's kind of like death by committee almost, like nothing ever seems to happen.
I think we have this perception somehow that nonprofits or, in the yoga space, this would include our organizations, but also we have pretty cool nonprofits, Give Back Yoga, all those nonprofits that come in. Like, we have this idea that nonprofits are somehow more pure, more idealistic than for-profit businesses. I mean, I've never been in a nonprofit that's worried about money more than a for-profit business. And its power structure is still power structure. If
Yeah.
you still have a dictatorial or top-down management structure or power structure in a nonprofit, you still have the same problems. You're just acting like you don't, or that you have better ideals. And that I think is a huge problem in the nonprofit space.
Yes, and I think it's also sort of specific to like yoga credentialing in the sense that,
Yes.
you know, when we started out, and Leslie Cam, I know you had Leslie on your show. I've
I
had on
did,
my
yeah.
show a million times because, he was there at the beginning, and at the beginning it was sort of a registry. It wasn't, and they were like educational guidelines. And then
Yep.
at some point, the idea was like it was going to be a credentialing body, which it's never really been equipped to do. And it's never been very clear how to create a set of like objective metrics for competency in yoga. Like making it hours, I don't think has necessarily been the best way to do it. And I know the IIYT, one of the things I liked about what they did is they seemed to kind of make an active move away from that and make it more about competency than hours.
I mean, I think it depends on where you want to go with the industry too. Like we could choose to make change in how we train anything. If, we say if we're forecasting 5 years, 10 years from now, this is what we want the profession to look like. This is where we want them to go. IYT most certainly is making those choices right now as we
Mm.
speak. And then they're shifting their credentialing and how they train and who gets trained based on where they forecast us going in, 10 years from now, say. We can make those shifts and changes. I think the hours at the beginning were just like, we've got to give them something. So we've picked hours and we've chosen not to evolve. We've chosen just to go, well, we're going to adapt and sort of, get all bendy and figure out how best to work the system that isn't really working for us. And that's just silliness. Like, I don't know.
It is. All right. Well,
I'm,
then
I'm
my
done
other,
ranting.
no, no,
Sorry.
I'm inviting you to do so today. I guess my curiosity now is, and it's something that even came up on the podcast not too long ago, where there's often a thought in many minds of those who've done like anywhere from 200 to 500 hours of yoga teacher training. Maybe they've taught for a long time. Maybe they're getting older. They're looking to move in more therapeutic directions because they don't want to do the fitness stuff so much that they used to do anymore. And they think maybe I should get yoga therapy credential as a way to kind of like elevate their career. And it might. I'm not saying more training is not necessarily a good thing. And I know many valuable yoga therapy trainings out there that will offer things that you're not going to get from a standard yoga teacher training. But at the same time, I don't always feel so confident that just more like having a yoga therapy degree really does that much more for someone if you don't have other things going on that are going to help you in that like career direction. So when did you start calling yourself a yoga therapist? Like when did that become more the marker for you rather than yoga teacher?
So I'm a very pragmatic human, and I've been a single mom for a very long time. I wanted to figure out how to make more money for the hours that I was working as a yoga teacher. And so in my head, in 2010, when I went to train, I thought if I can run books the way a massage therapist runs books. And we've all had those sort of yoga classes where one person comes and they tell you what they want, and then it's just you and them, and you've kind of worked on this whole thing. And I'd been seeing sort of like, oh, wow, this is really cool how one-on-one individual attention really creates outcomes. I didn't have the language yet to understand what the hell was happening. So I wanted more training to figure that out. But ultimately, I wanted to book out like a massage therapist booked out. So I was like, I Googled, I Googled my favorite yoga teacher. And I was like, and she was on staff at this yoga therapy course. And I thought, okay, so I'm going to gamble on this. And I went and got trained. And that's how I started being a yoga therapist. At the finishing graduation, they were like, okay, now you're a yoga therapist. This is well before the credential. So I graduated in like February 2011. So 5 years before the credential came out from the IIYT.
Hmm.
So we were all still waiting for them to even credential schools at that point. And here's what I think yoga therapists especially old school yoga therapists, probably don't like hearing me say, and I've said it more than once, but it's going to make people sad or mad, and I'm sorry. But I did. I will say from my own space, from my own heart, one of the reasons why I wanted to call myself a yoga therapist is because I wanted to act like I was going to be better than a regular yoga teacher. I didn't want to be just another yoga teacher. I wanted people to take my work seriously. And I was like, we're doing this cool thing. And I'm not like a yoga teacher, like those people at, Planet Fitness or the
Hmm.
gyms or the Ys. Like, we're doing something quote unquote different here. Remember when we had that big phase in like 2018 where we're all like, we're doing the quote unquote real yoga here. And, everybody else is doing like
The
pseudo
whole
fake
picture of
yoga.
yoga, right? Not just
Yeah.
the asana. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. and, and again, I loved feeling very morally superior about all of that before I was able to unpack it. And I truly think that some of yoga therapy is rooted in that sort of moral superiority. Like, we all have the same job.
I
We all have the
really
same job.
appreciate you making that admission. And I think that you said a few things there that I'm interested in. One, you talked about how it came out of working one to one with people
Yeah,
and wanting to have more like resources to do that effectively. And I think that makes a lot of sense because even in the early days before there was yoga therapy, I had all these private yoga students. Like
totally.
that was how I had enough money for like I made way more money than I make now sometimes because you would have like two or three privates and then you would also have your group classes.
Yep.
But private yoga instruction also, I guess my issue there, and it is that it is sort of like a class issue because only people who got like I've never spent $100 for a private yoga class in my life. Have you?
No.
Like, but that's what I was charging.
Oh, sure. Me too.
And I guess part of what a lot of us wanted to do was try to like make it for like everybody, not just people who had that kind of money. But then that's the trade-off because you need people who have that kind of money to like make a living.
It's the 80/20 model. I mean, that's what I use is, you make your money, you're expensive and enough in 80% of your business that you can give 20% away. That's what I
Mm.
do. And
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
could
I'm
talk about that because I was
150
looking at the
bucks.
pricing at your yoga center, and I just opened one recently, and you're doing it real different. I have some questions about that, but first, I want to stick on the yoga therapy thing because one of the things that brought us together today was, when I recorded with Susie Haitley, I think it was like a couple months ago. At this point, the morning before I was going to talk to her, when I was getting ready to talk with her, I happened upon a Facebook post from Amy Wheeler about what was happening at the yoga line. I mean, the IYT.
Yep.
And so I brought it up randomly because I had met Susie Haitley at a yoga therapy conference. She was calling herself a yoga therapist long before it was a thing too. And, neither of us really felt all that equipped to talk about it. And she had the idea of me trying to get the head of the IYT and Amy on together. And I did reach out to them. And, the woman from the IYT said she was open to coming on eventually, but they're still in the middle of doing stuff. And I think Amy just had like a lot of stuff going on in her personal life right now and like just didn't want to talk about it more. And
Yeah.
she was the person who said, oh, why don't you go talk with Rebecca? She's got this Facebook group that all these conversations are happening about. And then your podcast, which I've been listening to ever since. So I guess how is it that you sort of became this person with the Facebook group? And maybe you can explain some for people listening because they might not know what the issue was that like it formed around.
Sure. So, that's a lot of questions. I'm going to start first of all with the issue that it was formed around. So there's a Facebook group that I run called The Future of Yoga Therapy. And the reason why that group got started was because last year, the IYT, also known as the International Association of Yoga Therapists, they created this sub-credential for medical professionals that they could go through a 300-hour training course and they could then essentially do light yoga recommending within their practice, right? So how it was sold to us, and it was not sold very well, which is really one of the problems, was that, a medical professional could go through and they say, imagine your doctor recommending a breath work technique while you're at your doctor's office, etc. 100 hours of yoga training, no necessarily prior yoga experience at all, right? I mean, if you know anything about the medical world, people are collecting credentials because that's how you get ahead and you have more gravitas, right? And so yoga therapists were like, whoa, wait a second. That's our job. Their job should be to recommend that their clients come see yoga therapists. Because ultimately, in the yoga therapy space, there's this problem that I always call the my doctor recommended me that I try yoga problem. Is that, you go, because we've all heard the story, right? You go to the doctor, and the doctor, somebody will come and say, oh, I had heart trouble, or I have high stress, or I can't sleep. I went to my doctor. My doctor said I should try yoga. And then what happens is that person goes home and Googles yoga studio near me. They find a hot yoga studio because there's more of them than there are the rest of us. They go to the closest hot yoga studio. They try out a class. They go, yoga's not for me, because they've sweat. They're on the floor. It's a fitness class. It's not a stress relieving class. All the things. And so we were like, well, we need you to tell the medical professionals to come see us as yoga therapists, because what your doctor actually meant was go see Rebecca. Go see somebody who can help you achieve a particular outcome using the full spectrum of yoga. And the IOIT instead seems to have wanted to shift the yoga therapy space into the direction of both clinicians, right? So if we choose to stay with them, if we choose licensure, all those things, we will be clinicians. Like, we will be operating under a Western modality and Western model, all of those things. And the rest of the industry will have to choose to shift in a different sort of way. When Leslie Kaminoff was on my podcast, he's like, well, yeah, we're mad because it's fucking with our shit, because we're in the middle, right? Like, we're both operating in this sort of like middle space. We're not clinicians. We have no interest in being in the traditional medical space. We're also not fitness yoga teachers. We're something else. And this essentially is a move to eliminate that. It also is a move to sort of eliminate the schools, because they set one of the first 300-hour programs in Stanford. So if a medical professional is going, who am I going to take a yoga online training from? So-and-so yoga therapy that I'm taking online.
The Stanford one's probably better, huh?
Yeah, right. Which we don't know if it is or it isn't. There's no evidence either way, right?
Yeah. But there's certainly an unfair weight to that, right?
Of course.
Yes.
Stanford inherently can take more people because they have, the bandwidth and the resources to take a larger volume of humans. Of course they do.
Brand name,
Right. So yoga therapy pushed back, and they were like, whoa, wait a second. And the IYT had kind of just slid this under the table, right? They hadn't really told many people about it. Some of the schools had been organizing since January of 2024, but it wasn't, it hadn't become a movement yet, because I think a lot of people didn't understand how it was going to affect yoga therapists on the whole. And then all of a sudden,
maybe if we could take a pause for a moment, because it's real. No, I'm sorry to interrupt you, because there's more to say, but I think it's real interesting to hear you give this account now for me, because in 2009, when Susie Haley and I were there, the conversation in the room was, is yoga therapy a clinical application or not? I literally got up and said that to the room. And it wasn't always clear. What's that?
What they say?
Well, Gary Kraftsaw was like, yes. But you had a bunch of people in the room who were like in the middle, like Leslie was there too. Amy was there. Like I was there. We were all, nobody knew what it was yet, Yeah. But some people were coming more from a clinical background. And then I actually wrote a thing that was published in the journal that was basically made a distinction between clinical yoga therapists and what I called preventative care yoga therapists at the time, because I didn't know what to call it. But it was, and some of it was also about, and we can maybe talk about this, like the difference between some people who were like more prescriptive, like I'm going to assess you and then give you an appropriate practice, and some people who were more like process oriented, like I don't know, but you and I are going to figure it out together, kind of thing. So all of that is to say that at the time, I argued that they make an introductory level training because I didn't want it to be clinical. And I thought what I was doing in my 200-hour training was a better preparation for someone who wanted to go be a clinical yoga therapist than other types of 200-hour trainings. And I was saying you should have, therapeutic yoga teacher certification at a 200 or 300-hour level as the prerequisite for the 800-hour, or some people wanted to do 1,500-hour level training. And that way you shouldn't use the Yoga Alliance stuff. And the guy from the Yoga Alliance was there and he got mad at me because I thought the Yoga Alliance was bogus by that point. And I was like, you guys should do your own thing, make your own introductory training. And, they all wanted to make it a high bar because of what you said, because they wanted to legitimize it so that the doctors would refer their patients. That's why they were all learning how to read soap notes.
Right. Yeah.
So
it's interesting. I was going to say, it's interesting that you say that, partially because now as yoga therapists, it's common knowledge. Like, we are doing assessments. That's one of the things that is different from private yoga classes from what a yoga therapist would do. Now, I'm not like live assessing where I'm like writing, on a clipboard kind of thing, but I am doing an assessment. There's a system in my head, and then I do go back and make notes as a yoga therapist, and I keep those client notes private and the whole shebang, right? That is.
So you are working in a more clinician way, I would say, by doing that.
I mean, that's frankly how we've been trained since the start. I mean, since 2010, we were training in a way that we were creating assessments, we were creating notes, we were like, my notes aren't covered by HIPAA, right? Because I'm not a licensed medical provider, but I do create notes that would be HIPAA compliant should that be the case one day.
Interesting. Okay, so how did people find out about it? Did it go out in an email or something, or they just announce because I imagine if I spent a lot of money for my 800-hour yoga therapy certification and I'm trying to make my way and legitimize myself, and then now there's this other avenue that I would feel undermined.
Absolutely. I mean, that's exactly what they're doing. I was, like, what do you mean? Especially for those of us who've been yoga therapists, like my yoga studio I started in 2019, 6 months before COVID. The reason why I still exist as a yoga studio is because I'm a yoga therapist. Like, I make good money as a yoga therapist, especially when I'm pushing my services. I have regular clients. I see them. Yoga therapy does cost more. It brings in more income. And the thing that made me really mad was like, I went out and I did all this work to create connections in the community. And, I have specific physical therapists that refer their clients to me.
Right.
I live very close to a medical base or a military base. So I have military clients that come in, clients who are first responders, and see like all these people that now you mean those people are going to go to their doctors and their doctors are going to do my job, but at 20%.
And I'm sorry to interrupt again, but do you think it was your credential, your yoga therapy credential, that was the basis for those relationships, or could have you formed those without it?
I mean, real talk?
Real talk.
Yeah, it's me. I mean,
because I'm saying that only because all the years of grinding it, like you said earlier, like your work does stand for itself. I think you're absolutely right like that. If people come to you and then they feel better, or like you help somebody and then they tell people this person helped me, is really how it happens.
I would say in 2011, when I first started out, I really wanted that credential. I really wanted to be able to differentiate what I was offering in our area from other people. As my skill set grew, as my expertise grew, I don't give a shit about it now. Like all of those things are because of my work. It doesn't matter what you call me. I mean, you could call me a, yoga, whatever. Leslie Kaminoff has 1,000 words for us. Yoga instructor, yoga educator, yoga,
Yeah,
whatever.
educator. Yeah,
You
yeah.
could, you could pick whatever you wanted to. And I'm still going to show up the same way. I'm still going to work the same way. I'm going to still do the things
Right.
the same.
Right.
In the beginning, when you're not confident, when you don't have the skill set yet, I think the title matters a little bit more. So there's also a disconnect between those of us who've been in industry for so long, who've been doing this so long. I'm just like, whatever you throw at me, I'm still going to have a job. I've made it this far, for goodness sakes.
Yeah, well,
I'm
there's
on the
not. What
final
else are we
round
gonna
of the
do?
games.
What else are we gonna do?
Yeah. Like,
Right. Okay. So then why do you end up being the one to start the Facebook group?
oh, because I'm a good social media person. I mean, Amy and Bo Forbes and I had gotten in a chat, the three of us together, and we were talking with other people publicly. I'm good with writing. I tend to see social media as like practice for blog writing and longer form writing. So I often use Facebook specifically because it allows sort of, those longer comments as like a way for me to get my thinking out. Like if I want to figure out what I'm thinking about in the yoga space, I'll just go start a fight with somebody online and then see if they can like argue with me.
Right.
So I got like, do you remember the wild days online in like 2016 and 17 when
Yes.
Facebook was intense, right? Like those of us that
I
were
used to
there.
say they were, there was a time when it was more innocent and then it got ugly, but there was a beautiful golden time where they were
Yeah.
long comment threads and they were
Yes.
constructive. Like you said, I
Yes.
engaged and I learned there and I learned I learned about myself in those comment threads.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so I got real good at that from those days and, kind of had kept up the habit going, okay, so when I needed to work out something new in the yoga space, I was going to go online and start something on my personal page. And then yoga people would engage with me there and we would kind of have back and forths about it. And so I was like, well, I can start a Facebook group. I've started a dozen of them, over the years. And then all of a sudden I sort of became in charge because I was the person chatting with everybody right away. That's how it
I
started.
I see. I see. Now, when you first heard about this 300-hour for medical professionals credential,
Yep.
which absolutely kind of undermines all the other training programs because a
Sure
lot
does.
of the people who were doing the 800-hour programs were people who had other like medical degrees and whatnot.
Yeah.
So when
And
you heard that, what did you feel some kind of way about it right off top, or what was your initial
yeah,
thinking about it?
right off the top, I was posting about it on my page, which is, Amy and I were Facebook friends and Bo and I were Facebook friends. Several other people who were like in the beginning were all Facebook friends. And so we were chatting on our own pages and our own threads. And I had started something. I had tagged the International Association of Yoga Therapists in my post, which was
Which is the
apparently
honorable thing to do. Thank you.
I feel that way.
Yes. No, when
But
people go off and they don't tag the person they're talking about, I feel like, hey, they should have an opportunity to hear what you're saying and respond if they want.
please, yes, because I mean, and again, so like I also grew up as an Italian American. I don't take arguing quite as personally as other people do. Like I
Yeah,
was
yeah. My
like,
family was the same. Like people thought
yeah,
we were arguing. We were just having a discussion, Yeah.
correct. Is
Yeah.
so like in the International Association, the IYT, they came and responded to my post. A couple of other people who were associated with that group came and responded to my post.
Mm.
And I kind of went at them and then we had kind of gone, everybody was like, wow, you have this particular skill set. I have a comm studies degree, right? I'm really good at communications. I'm
Hmm.
good at saying what needs to be said without getting sued. So, you know,
Nice. Yeah.
so, so everybody went, okay, let's start having some conversations in one space, which is how this Future of Yoga Therapy group came about. And it was beautiful and amazing and incredible. And it was sort of like a lightning in the bottle moment.
Okay, so say something about that last part because it starts out as like maybe a gripe, right? Like I can't believe they're doing this, but the hope would be that you also get to interact with a bunch of other people who are dealing with the same kind of things that you are. It sounds
Exactly.
like it was also kind of a positive. It turned into like I saw this other post where people were like leaving because of all the other political crap that's going on, and you're like, but wait, we just had this great thing happen here. So talk about
Yes.
the great thing that happened there, rather than just everybody being upset.
Well, the cool thing was, there is, I think, a missing piece in the yoga space for us to connect.
Mm,
Like a lot of those groups that are out there now are primarily there to like sell you a thing, or oh, this is so and so's group and they have a
mm,
podcast or they have a
yeah.
6-week business course or you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
I'll take your
there's
yoga business to six figures thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And like and again, no shade at any of those. Like I
Yeah.
have good
Hopefully.
friends who run very robust groups in the yoga space. But I
Mm,
feel really protective about this because we're lonely as an industry. We need to connect with each other. Like the first thing that happened is everybody was doing like those intro posts, right? And it was, your face or a headshot and then a little bit about why you were here and then why you loved your job, why
mm,
you love doing yoga. And that was like the best part is remembering there's so many people in industry like me who have such passion for their work, who love their jobs, who love what yoga has brought to their lives and how they get to share that with other people. And we don't get reminded about that often enough, I think.
mm. I get it. It's lonely a lot of time. I know what you mean.
So lonely. That's
Yeah. And
why I started a podcast. So I
me,
had
yeah,
friends.
me too. And I have like a weekly teachers meeting that I've done since 2016. And,
Oh, nice.
some of the people have been there since then. And they're just like some of my best friends on the planet.
Yeah,
And just to kind of have people you can geek out on yoga stuff with.
totally. There's so few, like, you're not going to your family dinner and being like, hold on, but just a second. I
Yeah.
just have to tell you about, the Panchamaya Kosha system or
Yeah, there's
something. You
this
know
new
what I mean?
paper on fascia or whatever, right?
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nobody cares except
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, yeah, I know. And I guess that's why people get upset because there is something wonderful about people who care about yoga and usually it's because people have had their own experiences. And I read some about you and you having your hip dysplasia as a child, and like
Yep.
we've had yoga kind of do something really important for us. And therefore, we're super passionate about the potentiality of it doing that for other people too.
Yeah.
Um,
My joke is always, this is me nicer. Like, imagine how I would be if I didn't have yoga. I'd be really mean about all this stuff.
well, I guess so. After everybody does their intro and everybody has the heart connection over like why we all decided to do this, you know, it doesn't sound like it went much anyplace. Like I think I've had glimmering moments of like that too, or hope for like a trade organization at one time or another. And I guess I have to admit I've become quite a bit jaded over time regarding that. Like, because there's been so many occasions where it's like we're a community and it's just like a bunch of like signaling.
No, what I think it is that, and refer to the previous like 3 minutes ago. I love us so much, but we tend to have this idea. It's like the Disney white horse sort of thing. Like we have this idea that this organization is going to ride up on a white horse, and someone else somewhere is going to have this grand idea of how to fix us. And that just isn't the case. Nobody's coming. And if we were all around a table, it'd be really hard to get us to agree. And if you like people when this whole thing started and the Facebook was really robust and not only were there intro posts, but we were really talking about the issues of the IYT and what they were serving and who they were not serving and how they had changed and all these incredible conversations that we'd been having. And everybody kept going, well, are you going to start an organization? The amount of Facebook messages I got where they're like, Rebecca, are you starting an org? Like, to do what? What do we
Yeah.
want?
Yeah. Yes. Good question. You would need to know that before you start one, I think.
I think the idea is somehow we're going to start another yoga alliance or another IAYT, and it's going to be the same, but somehow better.
Yeah.
Like, like we're going to put a
Somehow.
fresh coat
That's the
of paint
problem.
on
The
it.
somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, what's actually not working in a system? Because I love orgs. Again, like communication studies. My emphasis was organizational communication studies, right? So I have like a real kink for how organizations work anyway. Like I could nerd out about that for a really long time.
Mm.
And I'm just like, but what's the point of starting yet another organization if you don't know what you want that organization to do?
Mm. See, that's so interesting though, because you said earlier that the reason why you're still alive, that you opened a place in 2019 is insane given everything that happened so shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
But that you said the reason was because of your yoga therapy
Yes.
marker.
Yes. I mean,
So it's
because of my
because it
work.
did distinguish you from just all the other yoga teachers.
Yeah, and I could see people one-on-one when I couldn't have group classes either, right? So
Mm,
like my yoga therapy clients, they didn't care where we were. We could have been meeting on Mars, on Zoom, in person. They didn't care. They just wanted to come see me.
mm,
So I had income that was always coming. I didn't have to convince them to come see me as a yoga therapy client versus having to convince people to, come to a group yoga class where they weren't sure if they were going to be safe and they didn't know the people in the room and were we going to wear masks or were we not? And, like
mm.
all the questions that we had in 2020, 2021, like yoga therapy, frankly, ruled at that time. And the IYT not regulating that is a huge part of how we got here. Because in 2021, yoga therapists were making a ton of money. Yoga therapy schools were making a ton of money.
I know
It was a
because see, but that
huge
was always an
boom.
issue for me because if it was a yoga workshop, you could charge hundreds. If it was a yoga teacher training, you could charge thousands. And if it was a yoga therapy training, you could charge tens of thousands.
Yes.
And a lot of
Yes.
times it was basically the same stuff.
I mean, yeah, like
Yeah.
that's the crux of this question though, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
is it
It's
a lie?
marketing. Is it just marketing and branding? I mean, that's kind of what I talked with Matthew Taylor about years ago. He was the first one who basically kind of admitted, yes, in some ways it was a way to set us apart to get research money. And,
Sure.
but
I love Matthew Taylor. I love him
I
so
know,
much.
I know.
He's the
Shout out to
coolest.
Matthew. He's a great guy. But I don't know. It just seems to me like, if is that elevating the profession by giving us a branding where we can charge more? I don't know. Is that
Which profession?
I don't know, the yoga therapy profession, I guess, is what I was talking about. That
I mean, then in that case, yes. So if you want to make yoga therapists distinguish themselves amongst the general yoga community, then yes, they've done that. I think.
I know a lot of people with yoga therapy certifications who are therapists who aren't making their livings off of it though, and they're very talented and good at what they do and
You
skilled.
can't. I mean, you can't. Like, even, and I've never chosen to run books the way that in my brain in 2009 envisioned, where I had 35 hours a week, where I would see like a massage therapist where you'd see 5 people a day. Like, I've never chosen to pursue that route because that wasn't how I wanted to work.
Mm,
But also, I don't think there's that kind of work for us. I mean, I think I could have probably done it in the 2010s, like,
hmm
2015, 16, 17, when yoga was hot, when, it felt like the thing to do. I don't know that I think there's that kind of work for us where you would be charging what would be a median reasonable rate and you would see enough people over the course of a week where you would, make a few $1,000s, a week doing whatever. Like I said, I'm $150 an hour. So, running 5 people a day sort of thing, I'd make a decent living if I did that. But I don't think I don't think, and again, I'm in the Midwest United States where I am, there's not that kind of work. Maybe in New York there is, maybe in LA, sure, but
I
not
don't
many other
know. I don't know,
places.
especially with sort of the saturation of
Sure.
professional yoga therapists and yoga teachers out there. I guess there's probably like you can have like a neighborhood or an area or a community, and I'm kind of hoping that would support whatever scale that you're putting together, and then you've got to try to find what that would be, you know?
Yeah.
Um, what made you open a physical location? Did you
I
have
mean,
spaces that you were renting previously, or like why'd you open a
yeah.
center in 2019?
So I had been working out of a different studio at the time, and it used to be that studio had 2 rooms and then had to come into one big room. So I didn't have as much space to rent. And my client was kind of like, my client's level was lifting up. So I had more people that I really wanted to be seeing. And also, like, the studio was a very traditional Iyengar studio. You know, it was the first place I trained at. And I saw something then that I was like, I had changed enough as a person that I didn't align with what that was. And that was sort of the exclusivity of those sort of more rigid disciplines, you know, styles of yoga, right? Iyengar is pretty rigid. Ashtanga is really rigid. You know, you've got that kind of like less welcoming feeling that happens at those spaces because it feels so much more rigorous, like a very, like a.
If you are hearing this message, then you're listening to the free version of J. Brown Yoga Talks. To hear the rest of our conversation, please subscribe to Podcast Premium at jbrownyoga.com/premium.